with regards to Freud and humor, so humor, Freud says that humor is a mature coping mechanism.
It is.
So that's the joke that I make all the time, is that when we're doing comedy and we're making fun of things in the world and ourselves, we're actually exercising mature coping mechanisms, right?
I love Freud's view on humor,
Yeah.
because he really gets at it at its very core. Welcome to Above the Legal Limit. I'm your host, Justin Chopin, business owner, lawyer, dad, world's best husband, traveler, and adventure seeker. On this podcast, we mix business with pleasure. We'll dive into growth strategies, entrepreneurial adventures, the business of law, and prove that business isn't boring. So let's get ready, because we are going above the legal limit. Hey, welcome to Above the Legal Limit. We have a very special guest today, Carrie Moulder. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Justin. I appreciate it.
So, Carrie, you have and you run The Big Couch.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Tell our millions of listeners out there about The Big Couch.
Yeah, so Big Couch is a venue primarily, but we put on shows, improv, comedy, theater. We do film screenings. But the easiest way to describe it, that my business partner and I like to describe it as a creative incubator. So if you have something that you want to materialize on stage, you can come to us, rent our space. We'll provide some guidance and whatnot. And then you get to perform it for people in the world.
All right. So that's great. I love that. So, we're lawyers, right? Mm-hmm. So we are essentially we're improv, right? So people come to my office is the great incubator. People come in there and they say, listen, I just want to get your thoughts on this, and we like storyboard out like how's this going to look? How's this going to, how would a jury perceive this? How would a judge perceive this? Is this a good argument? Is this a believable argument? Mm-hmm. And that's just like all day long. But, I love that. And so like some law firms will have like the mock courtroom, right? I know there are like a couple of guys in town that have like their pretend courtroom and they do that. But it's like a little bit like that, it sounds like. So you provide the space, you provide the environment and allow them to come in and sort of create. Is that
Yeah, so let's say you have an idea for a show, a comedy show or a theatrical a piece. You will come to us and say, hey, I have this idea. Some people come with fully formed concepts, so really they're just renting space. But some people will come to us with, like just a little glimmer of an idea, and so we'll walk through different options. We'll say, well, this idea is kind of like this other idea, and this is how they do that. But most of the time it's just about like kind of being a cheerleader for people and saying, you can do it, let's do it. And what do you want to do?
Well, so I'm reminded of that Seinfeld episode, right? Where like they're pitching the idea of Seinfeld to NBC, and they're
it's a show about nothing.
It's about nothing. It's nothing. And they're like, well, it's something. No, nothing. Right? So how did you get involved in this? Like, how did you come up with this concept of the Big Couch?
Yeah, so I started doing comedy in 2015. With improv comedy, and so that's my art form, is improv comedy and sketch comedy. And really enjoyed it, really loved how it sort of expanded my concept of operating in the world. I have a communications background, so I'm constantly getting feedback. And in communications, you have to be open to other people's ideas. So I was already coming from a growth mindset or a yes mindset, but I'm also an only child and a very strong perfectionist. So the idea of improv helped me sort of balance that, of being like, oh, okay, I can be more experimental. I don't have to be perfect all the time, right? And so I started doing improv, and then I started doing sketch comedy, and met a bunch of people who were super talented. And because I have a corporate background, a nonprofit background, I was always like, wow, I could do this. I could run a theater. I could run a space for this kind of stuff. We just did it.
Well, that's fun. When did you start?
So we founded Big Couch in 2020.
Okay.
And then there was a thing that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a thing that happened.
times.
We were lucky in that we didn't have a space, so we didn't have any overhead or anything. So we did some virtual stuff, and improv on Zoom is weird.
Right.
Because just like you want to be in person with people, right? You
Right.
want to feel
Yes.
the energy, and you
Yes,
want to feel
virtual
the space.
improv sounds difficult.
Yeah. It's good from a learning perspective, but not from a show perspective, right? And so we kind of paused stuff. And then when vaccines started to be available and people were more comfortable doing things, we started doing drop-ins at Ottoman Park. And people would come and just play around with improv and stuff. And then more and more things happened, and we started doing more shows and more classes. And we were kind of bouncing around at a couple of locations. We used Broadmoor Wellness Center, we used Actors Apothecary for doing our classes, and we hit capacity in those spaces. And so we started looking for our own space, and we got really lucky. And
Where's the space?
So it's in the Bywater. So
Okay.
it's right off of St. Claude. It's on St. Claude and Desire.
Okay,
where it
that's
is.
fascinating. So I have a couple of kids. We're in homework years.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
I don't get out anymore. Like this fascinating idea. There was like, well, we're located in the Bywater, and we have this wonderful space. And I'm thinking like, oh, that's really cool. I'd love to see that. And then I'm reminded, man, you haven't even been to a movie since 2016. You're not going anywhere. You're going home. You know exactly where you're going. You're going home. And we have to finish that math homework tonight, okay? But that sounds very interesting. So I also understand you are going back to get a master's degree in social work. Is that right?
I have one.
Or you have one. Why did I think? Okay.
I'm a licensed social worker. Yeah.
So how do those balance? The sort of, because it's interesting. The two places that you mentioned for improv were the Actors Apothecary and what was the
Broadmoor Arts and Wellness Center.
Arts
so
and
it's a
Wellness,
community
right?
Center. Yeah.
So there's this kind of, I'm picking up this play of social work and wellness and comedy.
Yeah.
Is that by design?
Oh yeah.
Or is it just happenstance?
Yeah,
right?
I think so. Improv is not therapy; it's therapeutic.
Okay.
Right. In the same way that yoga isn't therapy, it's therapeutic. Right. And so, in the same way that we need to exercise our bodies, we need to exercise our minds, and being able to be creative and express yourself is really important to us as human beings. Right. And so, yeah, I pursued a social work degree mostly from a community perspective. So I'm not a social worker in a sense of a therapist or a case manager. I'm more of a community support, and I think a lot about community care as opposed to self-care, right? Like we're all responsible for our own self-care, but there's a lot that we can do for each other, and a lot that the systems and structures that we exist in can do for us, in allowing that care for ourselves. And so I see improv, comedy, theater, art, burlesque, drag, all of these performance avenues, filmmaking, all of these as ways to express yourself and give you the outlet that you need to put yourself out there in a more authentic way, but then also just experiment and play around. When we get to a certain age that you don't play anymore, right? You said you have kids, right? You're doing homework with them, right? And now they have to do homework. They don't get to play, right?
I feel like they get to play. I don't get to play.
Right.
Yeah, they're playing.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad. But yeah, we lose that as we get older, and play and experimentation is so important to us as humans.
I agree. Right. So my background's really in psychology.
Yeah.
And not even like real psychology, like philosophy psychology. Mm-hmm. Right. But, we'd always talk about sort of these concepts of, to have a healthy mind, to have like a healthy psyche and a healthy being, you have to have there are more elements to life. Comedy, I agree with you, is one element, right? So in a more fundamental level, sometimes we'll say, Freud would say to be healthy, right? Of course, he would define everybody's either being neurotic or psychotic, but even beyond that, to be healthy, like you work, right? Yeah. And you do things, and you have relationships. Mm-hmm. That is what a healthy human being, and it doesn't matter, where you may fall on, the spectrum of healthy and success. None of that really is important when you're talking about someone on an individual level. But creating those relationships, improv and comedy or any artistic outlet, I agree with you, is hugely important. Which is why I run, because I'm a huge loner. Right. I'm like, I'm going for a run so that I can get away from all you people. I joke, but I was a good friend of mine. We were at a race together, and I'm like, I'm a very, very focused in the old days I'm not like winning races, by the way, I'm just finishing them. And
that's enough. That's winning in my book.
Right. And so I look over and she's talking to me. I see her mouth moving and I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Were you saying something? And she's like, I've been talking to you for 5 minutes. I was like, oh, I had, I've got like noise cancellation and deafening decibels. I'm all alone here. There's no one around me.
Music or podcast? Music or podcast?
It's music. Yeah. It's music, and it has rhythm. You got to have like those beats per minute, right? You got to make sure that you can kind of get in a rhythm. But
for sure.
But it's a very similar thing. That is my opportunity to sort of unplug and like think things through, right? It's really. Someone once asked me for my playlist, and then they were like, "Oh, that's really embarrassing." We don't talk about the playlist because there are only so many artists that can really have the right beats per minute, right? And so
what you're trying to achieve, like in line with your personal goals,
exactly, right? So my wife, started running before we had kids because I was a big runner, and she was like, I'm just really struggling to get here or there, and I was like, well, what are you listening to? And she's like, oh, I was listening to Paul Simon. And not just like any Paul Simon, like slow Paul Simon, like Diamonds on the Sole of Her Shoes Paul Simon. I was like, well, honey, you can't run to that. She's like, but I like that song. And I was like, yeah, but that's just not how it works. You can walk to that, I suppose. You could stroll. I could put you in a stroller and we could meander to that. But yeah, so you have to get something really poppy, and so maybe there's some T Swift in there, especially right now, like you can't.
Oh yeah, Shake It Off is probably a great song to run to. The beat on that.
I was actually just talking about this yesterday. I can't think, and this is extremely off topic, but that's how my brain operates. I can't think. So right now in New Orleans, Taylor Swift's coming. Right?
Oh yeah.
The deal is it's 3 shows. I'm not going.
Yeah.
I know this lawyer, he had 4 tickets. I said, and he was wanting to sell them. And I thought, well, we're 4, my wife, my 2 kids. My wife actually told our kids, like last year, like, yeah, we're going to get tickets to Taylor Swift. And I said, why would you tell them that? We're absolutely not getting tickets to Taylor Swift. So I thought, oh, well, maybe. I said, well, how much are they? And he says, well, it was basically like $5,000 a piece. I was like, oh, well, no, I don't want to spend. I'm not going to go. You could just go buy a car, right?
Yeah, you could take a trip to Europe for 4 weeks.
You could do anything
for a family of 4.
Pretty much anything, right? So I could just go buy a used car, drive it around the country, and then drive it in the water and walk away. I could do anything for $20,000. So the deal is, right? It's New Orleans, and so everyone's losing their minds. Yep. We got to close the office early. We're full Mardi Gras mode around here. She's going to make $14 million per show. They said it'll be $42 million is what she's going to walk away with. And I had to think, they're moving out homeless people. I saw them painting under the interstate. So they're like under the overpass. They're actually out there painting like the cement columns. Like Taylor is going to walk and be like, this place is trashy. Look at this. She's going to have like a white glove and be like, the cement is not even painted. They're repainting the cement. They're rerouting traffic.
Right.
I don't know how that's going to be, but I suspect I'll find out tomorrow night when I pick up, some family members who are going. And the ride shares, they're making you go all the way out to like Duncan Plaza, which I don't typically go to on foot at midnight. And I'm thinking, I can't imagine any other human being on this earth, either alive or dead maybe, who could create such a stir in a city over a concert. Yeah, not even Paul
Simon.
Certainly, I went to the Paul Simon concert, and I love Paul Simon. Huge Paul Simon fan. No, absolutely not. Nobody even knew that there was a Paul Simon show, and he sold out the place. Yeah. But like you could have, John Lennon rise from the dead, you know, and George Harrison, and the Beatles could reform one night and one night only.
Yeah.
You know, the zombie Beatles, and nobody would care this much.
Yeah, that demographic would just be like, I'll see that on TV.
Exactly.
Watch that on TV.
Fascinating. It's fascinating. I really,
It's wild,
the president comes into town and everyone's like, they're having to reroute traffic. The president.
Yeah. They're not worried about the unhoused. Yeah.
Nobody. I was like, I don't know. The Dalai Lama could be in town. No, nobody cares.
Yeah,
right?
Dalai Lama did
Rolling
come
Stones.
to New Orleans.
Nope, nobody cares.
It was kind of a big thing though when the Dalai Lama came.
It did. Everyone had the flags.
Yeah. And but it wasn't like this.
It wasn't like
level,
this.
right?
It's fascinating to me. I love it. I love it. You know. So I'll listen to some Taylor Swift. That's what my kids said this morning on the way to school. They're like, well, maybe we can just watch it on TV. Can we watch it on TV? And I'm like, no. And he's like, why not? And I was like, well, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't understand. I said, well, she's not going to let you just watch it on TV. She wants you to come to the show.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, we'll have to rent it. And I was just like, okay. So we're.
That's just all right. I do want to circle back though.
Yeah.
To, can we circle back to Freud for a second?
Yeah.
Yeah. Love Freud. He's a wackadude, but he has some interesting things. So with regards to Freud and humor, Freud says that humor is a mature coping mechanism.
It is.
So that's the joke that I make all the time, is that when we're doing comedy and we're making fun of things in the world and ourselves, we're actually exercising mature coping mechanisms. Right.
I love Freud's view on humor.
Yeah.
Because he really gets at it at its very core. I was actually, no, I'm not even kidding. I said this yesterday to one of the lawyers here because I said like a very off-color joke. It was a very inappropriate joke. And he looked at me with like shocked and appalled as though I would make an inappropriate joke, which is ridiculous. I never make an appropriate joke. I only make inappropriate jokes. And that's why they're funny. And Freud sees this and he understands it, and he says the taboo is where, that is humor. That's what we take the taboo and we turn it into something that's funny, and it's a way for us to discuss things that we all know to be true, but that are really inappropriate to say in a humorous way.
Yeah.
I'm always reminded by that. And I always laugh, comedians can get in so much trouble, right? And so you remember, there was the comedian who's made an awful comment about Donald Trump. I don't remember if it was I don't remember what it was, but it was, I can't remember. Big hair,
Tenacious D?
No, not Tenacious D.
His stuff was about Palestine, I think.
No, the female Canadian. I mean, the female.
She's a big red hair.
Big red hair.
Kathy Griffin.
Kathy Griffin. So Kathy Griffin makes this comment about Trump, and everybody is just appalled, right? And so that she got canceled. Right. And so, but I always think it's amazing to me because I always suspect, I'm not a comedian, I'm a lawyer. If I were a comedian, I would always be pushing those boundaries as to what's funny and then what's too far.
Yeah.
And I always feel like my brand of humor would always be just past that line where everyone's like, oh, well, that's it's funny, but that's not funny at all. I would be canceled in a heartbeat. But I always think that that's a struggle for comedians to where do you draw that? Where do you draw the line? And I guess the line is you actually don't know, because if they all laugh, you're great. And if they don't laugh, you're done. You're canceled.
It depends on the audience, but I would say, so I use and we encourage at Big Couch a philosophy of punching up. So in using humor to make fun of power and privilege.
Sure.
Right. So
they don't beat on the
right. So
there's no need to make fun of the homeless guy. Right.
Or exactly. Jail's not funny. Addiction's not funny.
Sure.
Right. But Donald Trump funny. Elon Musk funny, right? These are people with privilege, with power, system and structure. Sorry, lawyers are funny.
Yeah, we can take it. We know. It doesn't bother me at all.
So making fun of privilege and power helps to, demystify, emasculate in some sense, right? And that's part of that, mature coping mechanism, right? The humor where you're taking this thing that has power over you, right? So I always say death is fair game for making fun of because it's a thing that has privilege and power, right? And then the other way we look at it too is you can make jokes about marginalized identity if you are in that marginalized identity, right? So I'm a white cisgendered woman. That's my joke space, right? I can make jokes about women's stuff, right?
I ought not.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
That's probably. I feel like I need to. That's like its own thing where I could be in like a group therapy session where like I can make fun of like old white male lawyers. I shouldn't make fun. Yeah. Like,
that's
good job, Justin. Like,
right. Yeah.
This is the healing. This is where the healing starts.
Yes. Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's how we help people find their line. Right. Because there are ways to use humor to take power out of very challenging subjects. Right. But you want to make sure you have that identity or share that experience before you do that. Because otherwise you're just being offensive and talking about stuff you don't know anything about.
Well, that's my line.
Yeah.
Offensive. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that I would say I don't know what I'm talking about. I would never, I'm a lawyer.
So, you know everything, so right?
That element doesn't exist for me, but I can see where some people may struggle with knowledge.
Yeah.
Not me. That lawyers are know-it-alls.
Yeah.
It's just they teach it to you in law school.
You can't be
you're
wrong.
Covered.
Right, you can't be wrong.
That's right. I'm never wrong. That's what somebody said to me not long ago. They were like, well, I mean, it must be really hard to be profitable as a lawyer because you have to account for so many cases where you're just going to lose. I said, lose? He said, we don't lose. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, you don't lose. You settle.
Yeah. You get something out of it.
You win, and then
you settle.
I mean, you do every now and then. You lose.
we did a corporate improv workshop for a group of attorneys. It was 100 attorneys, when we were doing the consultation to do the workshop, the folks we were working with were saying, lawyers can't be wrong, and these are folks. So it's the Southern Poverty Law Center, right? So they're taking on, cases where you kind of have to be really creative about where you're going and how you're addressing it, right? To make sure that you win, that isn't a settlement, right? Or whatever. And the thing that they said to us was, we need to make them more comfortable with experimentation and to feel comfortable with uncertainty, right? So that's for all the attorneys out there listening, come take an improv class so that you know how to be comfortable with uncertainty and that you become more comfortable with experimenting and not being right all the time. Because in improv, everything is right.
Right?
Yeah. But you got to say it and put it out there even if it's wrong, right? So we were talking about Taylor Swift earlier. I threw out the song Shake It Off, right? I might have said shake it up or shake your bum bum, right? And in the improv world, we would have said, oh, absolutely, that's a Taylor Swift song, no matter what I said, right? But in the real world, somebody would have corrected me. So. Of
course. And in the legal world, they absolutely would have. Yes. And they would have done it over and over and over again to the point where it was just, you're beating the dead horse, right? But so what's interesting is sometimes as a lawyer, you're dealing with facts in real time.
Yeah.
Right. So we had a deposition yesterday. One of my lawyers is telling me that he's like, well, bad news, good news, bad news. Deposition's over. Bad news is it sucked. And I was like, what's going on? He's like, well, our client neglected to mention this. Mm-hmm. He's like, I caught him in like 5 or 6 lies. Right. And so that happens. Right. I mean, a lie, I don't know. I mean, his reality. Mm-hmm. And so actually I maybe I shouldn't say this. Don't make a reel out of this, but and he said they were walking out and he said, what, listen, I mean, you lied about all this stuff. I caught you in like 5 or 6 lies. He goes, listen, I'm a drug addict. We lie. And so I was like, you know what? I appreciate your candor. Mm-hmm. I really appreciate that. That's the most honest thing I've ever heard. But lawyers, so we deal with things in real time, and it's a lot like improv. Yeah. And so I often say, like, my job is not to create facts. I don't. The facts are the facts. My job, I can polish them. I can reshape them. I can say them maybe in a more approachable way. Right. Mm-hmm. There are tricks to this where I can take sure, he may have murdered a person, but what you're not seeing here is, this heart of gold he has, or whatever, you know. And but I don't create facts, but we get facts all day long, and so you have to be quick, right? Just like comedians and improv, like you have to be quick. You kind of like hear it, kind of digest it, not, you know, no wide eyes, right? But, okay. And then you're like, I thought you said she was dead. It was yesterday. I thought you said she was dead. Like, oh, that. But you have to be quick. I feel like trial lawyers could use a dose of improv. I agree with you. I think that could be a good thing. It's a good skill to pick up on. You have to practice being quick like that. But if you're always right, and if you walk in shut off, knowing what you're going to say, knowing what the facts are, you don't have the flexibility to pivot. And then you can. That's how you lose, right? So you have to be flexible as you're getting this information. Much like I would imagine in an improv group, right? I mean, you like, oh, I thought I was gonna say shake it off. I said something else, and now we've gone in this other direction. You know.
Yeah, it starts with listening. Right.
Right.
It starts with not going in and thinking about what you're gonna say. Right. The worst thing that folks ask me, how do I know if I'm a bad improviser? And I said the only way that you can be a bad improviser is if you're not listening. Right. So
we talk about this a lot, and we see really untrained lawyers. We like to say that we're like classically trained lawyers. Right. So much like doctors. Right. So you can be like, oh, I got my degree, you know, in my medical degree, I don't know, some shanty, down the street, or you can be like, oh, I went to Johns Hopkins, right? So all things are not created equal. They just aren't. So, but I often say, lawyers, some of them are trained, and, otherwise, you get a law degree. You can go do anything you want, right? So you call yourself a lawyer, and you can take, with the exception of one case that I can think of, capital murder. You can take any other case that comes in the door. You can tell everybody you want. You'd be like, yeah, I absolutely know how to do patents. Right? Well, I got a second example. But so you'll always know when a lawyer is not really well trained, and they will show up to a deposition and they have like their list of questions, and they're sitting there. And they will just ask the questions, and they're not listening to the answers because they're looking at their next question. And we who I think do this a little bit better. I may have I'll have a list of questions. I usually don't look at them. I usually start a dialogue, and I might be taking notes, and then at the end I'll go back and be like, did I do everything I was supposed to? I forgot to ask you about the accident. And so, but they're not listening. Yeah. And if you don't listen, you're missing out on all the answers, and you're not following up, and you're leaving all this evidence out because you're not paying attention. Because you think you got it all, and you don't, right? Because you don't actually know what information's coming at you, right? So it'd be like, what's the improv thing where you ask the audience for a topic, right? And someone's like, Tupperware, but you're like, no, I already came with my Taylor Swift thing rehearsed. Sorry, I'm doing Taylor Swift, right? And the audience just sort of shuts down.
I wish Tupperware is what they would yell.
I know, right? That could be. Could do that next time.
I'm gonna keep that one in my back pocket. Usually it's something very inappropriate.
I know. Well, you know what? I'll come and I'll just be the guy in the back that like heckles with like new ideas.
Yeah,
right?
just be like Tupperware.
Why not? So I think I agree with you though. I think all lawyers could do, and maybe everybody too, but certainly if you deal in the world that we deal in. A little bit of improv, I think, would go a long way.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that'd be a healthy approach to what we do.
Yeah, everybody feels like improv is really scary, and I get that. When I walked into my first improv class, I was really nervous, right? Because I was like, oh, everybody's going to be so funny, right? But it's not about being funny. It's about being surprising, right? We laugh because something caught us off guard.
Right.
In a good way, right? It's some people laugh when they're scared, right? And so people laugh because, one, it's surprising, and two, it's relatable, right? And so that's where the humor comes from. And so that's what I always tell students is, and folks that are doing comedy, and I was like, what's the surprise here? You're not telling me anything I don't already know. right? In a class last night, right? They were doing a scene about shopping malls, and someone said something. You're probably going to have to cut this, Armand. But someone said something about, the adult section at the Hot Topic, right? And someone was like, no, that's Spencer's. And I was like, nope. In our world, Hot Topic has an adult section, right? And we played through that, right? Because that's the funny, surprising thing to think that Hot Topic has an adult section, and what does that look like, right, at the Hot Topic adult section. So that's what we talk to folks that are doing comedy about. It's about that twist, that funny, that, there's even you do like 2 beats, and then the third beat is like something different, right? Like a soap, shampoo, and
like orange juice.
Yeah, right.
Right. For me, it'd be like red wine.
Right. Yeah. Right. Something that's not quite there, but might work in a pinch, right? I wash my hair with soap, shampoo, orange juice, and you're like, oh, that doesn't make sense. But you could wash your hair with, it seems true and authentic, right? It's just weird.
Seems like something my kids would do.
Right, yeah.
Right. But, you talk about being nervous, and I think nervousness is a product of caring about it. It means it's important. And so if you weren't nervous, would your heart really be in it? Would it really be fun? Right?
Yeah.
If you weren't nervous
100%.
about it, then should you even be doing it? We do this a lot in my family because, my kids, I often say we make our kids do things that we would never want to do as an adult. Right? I just drop them off and be like, you don't know a single person here, but I'm going to drop you off at 8 o'clock in the morning. And listen, I'll see you tonight, like at 6. And there's like a really shitty lunch for you there. And all right, well, good luck. I don't know anybody in there. I don't either. I'm actually just going to drop you off right here. Right? Like we expect things as an adult. We'll be like, I'm not going there. Are you insane? And so sometimes my kids, and they're like in ballet, right? And they're like now in like double, triple ballet. And, or he's in like a music class and he has to do like concerts, or she was doing like piano. She had to do recitals. She was like 5 years old and had to like get, in front of this enormous, it was like at a mega church. There's, on the North Shore, and she'd like get up the microphone and be like, my name is, and I'm going to be playing, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. At 5 years old, I can't imagine doing that, right? I never would have been able to do it. But they do these things that we can't do. And so they'll be like, I'm nervous. And I was like, well, of course you're nervous. I'm nervous sitting here watching you. Everybody in the room is nervous. And if you weren't nervous, I would say that's weird.
Yeah.
The reason you're nervous is because you care about it. And that's where the excitement comes in. So you had a video this morning that actually was reminding me of that. It was that actor that I don't, because I'm not good with names. And he was saying like you had reposted this reel about try to do a bad job acting, right? Yeah. Right? I don't know. Do you know that actor's name? You're an actor, so you should know them all. Yeah. You should know all the names. William Dafoe. So William Dafoe is saying like try to do a bad job acting.
Accomplished actor.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but it's a similar thing, like try to do a bad job like at improv, right? We all want to do well. Bless you.
Sorry.
We want to do well, and the nervousness is our body's cue to us that this is something that we care about. This is something that's important.
Yep.
And I think it's a really good thing. And we talk about it here, in courtrooms, right?
Sorry.
Bless you. But like, arguing something really important to a judge, maybe you're talking about someone's family, right? Like maybe if you're doing family law and you're arguing like who should have the kids, what's more important than that? Right. So back in the old days, I used to do cases like that. I cannot do. Once I had kids, I was like, I don't want the stress of this ever again. Yeah. So I'm actually not going to do this work anymore. But I mean, so yeah, you're really nervous. Why are you nervous? Because this is hugely important. If I screw this up, somebody's life is in a mess here, right? Yeah. Someone has put their faith, their trust, their livelihood in my hands and said, Justin, I don't know how to do this. You have to help me. And that's the act of being a lawyer. So you deal with this like intense nervousness. And so, using that for momentum, I think is important, right? So you use the nerves, so like don't allow it to cripple you, accept it, and say, okay, I'm really nervous. It's because this is an important case.
Yeah.
Okay, so what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to make sure that I'm the most prepared person in the room, right? Because I can feel anxiousness about this, so I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that if I lose, it's not because of me.
Right.
It'll be something else. But or my wife's a lawyer too. She had a major argument somewhere in the Midwest. I don't know, something very, very fancy legal stuff. And she's called me on the phone, and she's like trying to do the argument. I was like, honey, why do you sound weird? She's like, I don't know. I was like, what are you doing right now? She's like, I'm just reading through my argument. I was like, are you reading your argument? She said, yeah. I was like, take the paper and put it down. Nobody knows more on this topic than you do. Throw it away and just do the argument. Like, you stop that. You sound like a robot. I don't even understand what because we're like, we're not, we're not FaceTiming.
Right.
And so I was kind of expecting her to get like really pissed off when I said that. But she didn't. And the next day she was like, that was actually the most helpful thing that I could have heard. You're right. She's like, I was nervous. And so I was relying on, something I had already written. And in the end, that's just not a way to do it. You have to trust yourself and freeform a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's what allows you to engage in a dialogue.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. In your firm, do you do things as teams? Or is it...
Nobody here is on an island.
Okay, great.
And this is like a mantra that I drive home.
Yeah.
I mean, I must say that monthly around here, maybe more. Nobody is on an island here. Nobody's going to try a case by themselves. We have 10 lawyers here. We have people who are experts in various different fields, but anybody can take any case that they want, by and large, right? So I'm not going to be like, no, you can't take that case. So we're all here to help each other, and I think it's one of the reasons why the culture here is so much fun, because we just, every day we're just sitting down, storyboarding ideas, and brainstorming about, okay, this client is hurt, they need a neurologist, but they live in like BFE, Louisiana. What are we going to do? It's like, okay, well, that's a struggle. We don't have neurologists here, and there's certainly no buffet of neurologists in central Louisiana. So, it could be anything, right? Or okay, well, this is unexpected. All of our witnesses died. That's happened a couple of times to me, actually.
Yeah.
Especially if cases go on for a few years, or like, they're all gone. They're like, okay, well, what are we going to do? We're like, well, I don't know. Let's talk about it. Let's think about it. How are we going to try this case without a witness? So everybody here is collaborating all the time. Usually in my office while I'm trying to work. Yeah, so that's a big thing with improv too, right? Is that you're creating with others, and we call it co-creation, right? So if you wanted to do a comedy and you wanted to do it by yourself, you do stand-up comedy. Right? If you want to do comedy and you feel like you want to do that and you'll be better riffing off someone or doing it in a group, then you come to improv, right? So Gilda Radner, wonderful comedian, gone too soon. She, very talented, spent most of her career working in collaboration, but folks were like, wow, you're really funny, you should do a one-woman show. And she was like, all right, cool, I'll do so she did an off-Broadway one-woman show, and she said it was the worst experience that she's ever had. I could see that, yeah.
Right, because she doesn't like to work alone, right, or didn't like to work alone. So for improv, we have a saying where before we go on stage, we say, I got your back, which basically means my job is to make you look good. I'm not out there for myself to make jokes. I'm out there to make my scene partners look good. I'm there to actualize the premise that we have started here, right? So teamwork is really important to us too. That's why I asked you that question. Of course, my mind's like, how do I connect law and improv? That's what I'm here for.
It's there,
right?
The whole thing. I promise you, law and improv have a lot
they're very similar.
of crossover.
Yeah,
they really do. It's just what we do is not really funny. We just have to make it funny. For internally, right?
Yeah, my first improv class, I had a nurse, an attorney, a teacher, and a couple of actors, right? So it was
It's
very
like the start of a bad joke.
Yeah, right. Yes,
on a boat.
yeah.
Right.
A nurse, an attorney, and a bunch of actors walk into a bar.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
That could be your next one. See, this is what I'm an idea guy. I just come up with ideas. This is what I do, you know. Sometimes they're funny. Sometimes they're wildly inappropriate.
Yeah.
I can't help it. Well, here I'm getting the this signal. Wait, you're in the biz, so you know what that means. But thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, Justin,
I really
thank you.
appreciate it. It was great meeting you, Carrie Moulder.
Yeah.
Tell our friends where they can find you, where they can find the Big Couch.
Yeah, bigcouchnola.com, on Instagram at bigcouchnola. Come check us out in the Bywater, 1045 Desire Street. I don't know when this is airing, but we have shows all the time, mostly Wednesday through Sunday. In December, we have the Louisiana Big Gator Comedy Festival. We are one of the venues for that. There will be venues all over the city featuring comedians from Louisiana and beyond, and that's December 12th through 14th.
Oh, fun.
And so
Okay.
we'll be one of the venues for that.
That's wonderful.
So, yeah.
I love that. I'm going to say something like, oh, we're going to go check that out. But you know the answer.
Yeah.
You know I'm not.
Well, here's what I'll say to you, Justin. Our shows start at 7:30. They're usually only about an hour long. So
Maybe.
it's shorter than a movie.
It is shorter than a movie. It's possible. It is. I would love to see a movie again someday. It would be really nice.
Yeah, in a movie theater.
In
with
like
dinner.
a theater.
Yeah.
And that's not Frozen. Because I did see Frozen Part 2, Refrozen, right? The spoiled meat version, refrozen. Well, hey, thanks so much for coming. I really appreciate it. Everybody, check it out, The Big Couch, bigcouchnola.com.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Great. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today on Above the Legal Limit. If you enjoyed the show and you want to hear more about business and law, hit that subscribe button. If you didn't like the show, keep it to yourself. Remember, there's no limit to what we can achieve. We will see you next week. Until then, even though we're above the legal limit, let's drive safely. Cheers, everyone.